Yes, my name is Dr. Valerie Rao. My last name is spelled R-A-O. I am the Chief Medical Examiner for District 4 and part of District 3.
Dr. Rao, are you familiar with the matter of the state of Florida versus Donald Smith?
Yes.
Did you conduct the autopsy of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes.
Did you take care to memorialize your autopsy of Cherish Perrywinkle as you have just described to the jury?
Yes.
Have you also reviewed your work in preparation for your testimony today?
I have.
In addition to having reviewed your work, do you also have a personal and independent recollection of this particular? Before Cherish Perrywinkle's body was transported to your office, did you in fact attend the scene where her body was discovered here in Jacksonville?
I did.
Why?
Because of the nature of the case, it was a child that was abducted. It was something that the entire city of Jacksonville was concerned about, being that it was a child.
Did you direct at the scene where Cherish's body was discovered, did you actually direct photography to be taken of the body before it was removed?
Yes.
Before we get to the photographs, let me ask you, in preparation for your testimony today, did you take care to reduce the extensive photography in this case to those photographs which will assist you in describing the injuries sustained by Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes.
Dr. Rao, will you go ahead and explain to the jury the steps you take in conducting an autopsy?
Yes. So when the body comes to the medical examiner's office, it comes under a particular number that is unique to the deceased person, and nobody else gets that particular case number. After which the photographs are taken of as is, the way the body came, without any disturbance. Clothing is not removed, nothing is touched. Photographs document the way the body came into the medical examiner's office. After which the clothing is removed. And in this particular case, the sex battery kit was done the day prior to the autopsy so that the evidence would not be lost. The following day, the autopsy was performed. And again, after the clothes are removed, the body is photographed again. After that, the body is washed and the injuries are photographed in detail, both in the front of the body, at the back of the body. Then in this particular case, there were additional dissections that were performed, and that was also photographed. During the process of the sex battery evaluation, a lot of evidence was collected. Then a Y-shaped incision is made from beneath the collarbones right here. The incision is extended to the middle, and then the incision is carried down to the pubic area. The organs are looked at before removal. Each of the organs is removed, and the organs are sectioned serially to look for the presence of anything that could cause the death of an individual. Pieces of tissue are taken on target organs, for example, the heart, the liver, the lungs, looking for microscopic evidence or maybe that there is a disease process that escapes the naked eye. So after that, prior to the start of the autopsy, fluid is taken from the eye. It's called ocular fluid. Blood is taken from the heart. Urine is taken from the urinary bladder. Bile is taken from the gallbladder. And these fluids are sent to the laboratory to look for the presence of drugs and alcohol that could account for the person's death. And then an incision is made from one ear to the other. The scalp is reflected forward and back. The skull is removed. The brain is looked at in the cranial cavity. Then it is removed, it's weighed, it's sectioned, again looking for disease that could account for the death of the individual. And after that, an autopsy report is put out.
You mentioned that in this particular case, you conducted the autopsy the day after Cherish's body was transported to your office. Is that correct?
Yes.
On what day was that?
So the date of the autopsy was the 23rd, and the sex battery kit was done on the 22nd of June, 2013.
Did you determine the weight of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes.
And what was that?
She was 67 pounds.
Did you review these photographs prior to your testimony today?
Yes.
And in fact, are each of these photographs that were taken at your direction?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Rao, let me direct your attention to your screen, please. Do you always take a photograph of the face of the body that you are working on reflecting the medical examiner number assigned to the body?
Yes.
Let me direct your attention to what's been introduced into evidence. It states 54. Does this photograph, in fact, reflect the medical examiner case number assigned to Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes. So 13-1034 means that in the year 2013, she was the 1034th case that came to the medical examiner's office.
Dr. Rao, you mentioned that the body was washed after it arrived to your office. Was her hair also cut?
Yes.
And for what reason?
So during the autopsy, when the scalp was reflected, there was an area of hemorrhage in her scalp that couldn't be seen because the hair masks the injuries on the scalp. So I shaved her entire head so that if there was a pattern on her scalp, we would be able to see that and photograph it.
Okay, next, I'm going to, as we go through your photographs, I'm going to first highlight for the jury what to expect. This next series of photographs, Dr. Rao, are as to injuries, superficial injuries to Cherish Perrywinkle's body. Let me direct your attention to what's been introduced into evidence as States 55. Will you please explain to the jury what is reflected in this photograph?
Okay, so what you're looking at are two areas. There is one right here, and there is another one right there. So the contrast between the two, what you are looking at in this area is post-mortem ant activity. The ants bite the bodies, you know, anything that stays there, and she was in this wooded area. So there were a lot of ants there. So after death, that's why you have that very different color that's yellow, dried, and parchment-like. Whereas this area, you can't really see her nipple because she's very light-skinned and it kind of blends with the rest of her chest chest area. But you can definitely see this is where her nipple is, and she has bruising right there that is caused prior to death while she was alive.
And do you have an opinion as to that injury?
Yes.
Let me show you what's been introduced and marked as States Exhibit 56. Is this in fact a close-up of the right nipple of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes. So just to tell you, this is where her nipple and areola, the brown area surrounding the nipple is. And around that you can see the bruising, the pink-blue discoloration.
Dr. Rao, what is your opinion as to that injury?
That is consistent with somebody sucking on her breast.
Let me direct your attention to what's been marked as introduced into evidence as States Exhibit 57. Will you orient the jury to this photograph, please, and explain the injuries reflected in it?
Yes. So this is her left leg. This is the knee area right here, so you can orient which part of the body. You have bruising right here. You have bruising right here, and you have a scratch here, a small bruise there.
What were you able to determine as to when, in relation to death, Cherish sustained these injuries?
Okay. All her injuries that she sustained are prior to her death, consistent with that time frame.
Let me direct your attention to photograph 58. Will you please explain what's reflected in this photograph?
Okay. So she has an injury right here. She has an injury right there. Smaller bruises right there.
States 59, will you explain to the jury what this photograph is of?
Okay, so you're looking at the back of her left leg, and she has a bruise right there. This is the back of her knee, so to orient you, back of her knee, and this is where her buttock area is right there. She has a bruise on the back of her left thigh.
State 60, will you please explain to the jury what this photograph reflects?
Yes, so this is her right leg. To orient you, this is her knee, her right knee. She has a scratch right there. She has a scratch right there.
Dr. Rao, you mentioned that you attended the scene where Cherish's body was discovered, and you saw at the scene branches and trampled down reeds and various debris around her body. Is that right?
Yes.
And these scratches were consistent with what, in your opinion?
So when it's consistent with when she was carried to the area where she was thrown, the long grass would scratch her leg and cause those injuries.
Let me show you State 61. Will you please describe to the jury what's depicted in State 61?
So this is the side of her right thigh. She has a bruise right there.
State 62.
This is the back of her right arm. She has a bruise right there, and she has small abrasions right there.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Rao, do you have an opinion as to the cause and manner of death of the death of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Do you have an opinion as to how Cherish Perrywinkle died?
Yes,
And what is it?
mechanical asphyxia.
Will you explain what that is to the jury?
So what she sustained was tremendous force on her neck, such that she could not breathe. She suffered swelling of her brain as a result of lack of oxygen to her brain, and as a result of which she died.
Before we review the photographs taken of Cherish Perrywinkle's neck, will you talk to the jury? I want you to talk to the jury about strangulation. Do you have experience in strangulation cases?
Yes, many, many times, yes.
And in fact, based on your experience, will you explain to the jury how long at a minimum it takes before a person dies from strangulation?
Okay, so you have different types of strangulations. You have manual, where somebody uses their hands to cause the lack of oxygen to the brain. You have a ligature, which means that you have something that you use to tie the neck of that person, again to result in lack of oxygen to the brain. So these are the types of strangulation that one gets. So the time frame, we have to understand, it is not like something that is without movement between two people. So if there is no movement between two people and somebody is, for example, from drugs, alcohol, or elderly, there would not be that much movement because to some extent you're incapacitated. But here we have two people who are in a struggle. The child is not incapacitated and she is going to struggle during this entire process. So I cannot tell you exactly how much time it would have taken to cause the lack of blood supply to her brain and her death. She has struggled because we have evidence of that struggle. So if there is no struggle and it's all, we cannot do experiments on that. So usually a period of 3 to 5 years of lack of oxygen to the brain, that person would die.
Okay, next let's review the photographs of Cherish Perrywinkle's neck. Let me direct your attention to State 63. Will you please orient the jury to this photograph and explain what it depicts?
Okay, so to orient, this is the front of her neck. You have her ears, left ear, right there. And this is the front of her neck. So what you are seeing on her neck is this broad area of bruising. And above the area of bruising, you have very fine little pinpoint areas of hemorrhage that are referred to as petechiae. So you have it here, you can see the petechial hemorrhage right here, and you can see the petechial hemorrhage right here.
Dr. Royale, how is petechial hemorrhage caused?
So petechial hemorrhage, they look like little pepper spots. And the reason you get that is when you occlude the jugular veins by pressure on the neck, the blood continues to flow through the carotid arteries, the vertebral arteries. These are just blood vessels, so I'm just giving you the names, but that's just terminology. But these are major vessels to supply oxygen to the brain, the arteries. But then the blood has to come back to the heart, and so they come back through the veins, the jugular veins. So if you close off the jugular veins, the blood cannot go into the heart, as a result of which all the vessels become so full and the little blood vessels burst because they are overfilled. And that process of bursting gives you these little areas of hemorrhage referred to as petechiae. So normally you get them above the area where the neck is occluded. Also on the face, if the child is light-skinned, like in this case, or the adult, then you can see it very well.
Dr. Royale, what opinion do you have of this mark that I've circled on state 63?
Okay, so those are areas where there are abrasions, which means that the force applied and the friction causes the skin actually to come off. So when the skin comes off, those are referred to as abrasions. When the skin is intact and there is injury underneath the skin, those are called bruises or contusions. So she has the bruises or contusions. You can see the blue areas right here, but then she's got these abrasions where the skin is actually rubbed off.
Let me direct your attention. We're going to skip 64 and I'll come back to it. Direct your attention to state 65. You talked about the petechial hemorrhaging. Is it demonstrated more clearly in this photograph?
Yes, so there are a few things you can see right here. Here the skin again is abraded, right there, right here. And it is in a linear pattern, which means that in this case there was a ligature used to strangle the child. So that force that's exerted by the overlying ligature that's used to strangle the kid actually caused the skin to be abraded.
Let me direct your attention to state 65. Is this a photograph of the opposite side of Cherish's neck as was reflected in the prior photograph?
Yes.
And what do you see in this photograph?
So here again you can see the bruising right there. You can see bruising right here. And it's in a linear pattern, you can see. And then you get the petechiae right here. And even in the area of the ligature application.
Now, Dr. Al, can you tell the jury anything about the ligature used to strangle Cherish Perrywinkle?
I was not able to actually see. Sometimes you can see the weave of the fabric. I couldn't tell you that, but I could tell you that it was a very broad. It could be a t-shirt that she was wearing or that was used apart from her clothing to tie it so with so much force to give you that ligature mark.
Let me direct your attention to state 67. Does this reflect the right backside of Cherish Perrywinkle's neck?
Yes, again you can see the ligature mark right there, and you can see the contusion, abrasion right here.
State 68, is that the left side of the back of her neck?
Yes, again you can see the linear pattern.
Let me go back now to states 64. Will you orient the jury to this photograph and explain what is reflected here?
Okay, so you're looking at her mouth and her nose and her chin. So you'll see that all the injuries are in a kind of a linear pattern, which to me indicates that the pressure that was put like that, so you caused all those injuries on that area of the face. So demonstrating this right here, the bruising on the chin, the abrasion on her lip, the abrasion right here, And this is the nose, but the inside down between the nostrils. All, if you look at it, it's like in one pattern. So the effect of smothering or keeping her quiet with force enough to cause those injuries.
Now, these photographs are obviously taken after Cherish Perrywinkle's body was cleaned, and yesterday the jury saw photographs of her body as it was collected at the scene. Did you actually see that her nostrils were bleeding from these injuries?
Yes.
Let me direct your attention to State 69. Is this a close-up of the nostrils and upper lip of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes.
And does this photograph reflect those injuries that you just told the jury about?
Yes.
State 70, also a close-up photograph of the left nostril of Cherish Perrywinkle, is that right?
Yes. There's another feature that you can see, because if you look down here, this is the gum margin between her teeth and her gum. So that same pressure caused bleeding into the line of her gum.
Let me show you State 71, because I think there we can see that bleeding, if you'll point that out.
Yes, you can see the hemorrhage or bleeding between the teeth and the gum margin.
Do you have an opinion as to causation for bleeding in the gum line?
That again is the pressure that was applied to her, the front of her face.
Now, you've testified as to petechia in her face, on the skin. Did you also see petechia in both of her eyes?
Yes.
We explained to the jury how petechia in the eye is caused.
Okay, so it's the same concept. When the blood vessels bringing blood back from the brain are so overfilled, they have no place to go because the return path is blocked, as a result of which the vessels rupture, and so in the eyes, which are, the vessels are very delicate, they burst. And the experience is that if the struggle is intense, the area of hemorrhage is large, and if the struggle is not that intense, they're very fine, for example, in the elderly or somebody that is compromised either due to drugs or alcohol.
Now, you mentioned hemorrhaging, so in addition to the petechia that you observed and notated, did Cherish Perrywinkle also have hemorrhaging in both of her eyes?
Yes.
And how would you describe that hemorrhaging?
It's large. There are large areas, and the photographs will explain how tremendous the bleeding is.
So we'll next go through the photographs of her eyes. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 72. Is this a photograph of Cherish Perrywinkle's right eye?
Yes.
And will you
Yes.
testify as to the injuries reflected in this photograph?
Okay, so these are the small petechiae that you see right here. When you flip the lid, you're looking into the lid, referred to as the conjunctiva.
Dr. Rao, what is reflected here on her upper eyelid?
Okay, so on the upper eyelid, she has an abrasion rubbed off, so a pressure on that area.
Let me show you State 73, also of her right eye. Will you explain to the jury what's reflected here?
Okay, here you can see the extent of the hemorrhage. It's not the fine petechiae, but there is actually bleeding into the conjunctivae that you can see in all these areas right here.
State 74, is this a photograph of the left eye of Cherish Perrywinkle?
Yes.
And will you indicate to the jury the injury reflected here?
You have a large area of hemorrhage right there.
State 75, is this the top of that same eye?
Yes, so once the fluid in the eye is removed, you can demonstrate photographically the injuries better. So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the groove between the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid and the globe of the eye, and so that's what you're looking at right there.
And lastly, state 76, also of her left eye. Will you explain to the jury what's reflected in state 76?
Yes, so again, the fluid is removed and you can see the extent of hemorrhage into the conjunctiva.
You mentioned that you took a sexual battery kit of Cherish Perrywinkle the day before you conducted the autopsy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Will you explain to the jury the process you undertake in collecting a rape kit?
Yes, so when the body comes in, nothing is done to the body. Fingernails are examined to see if there are any broken fingernails, because during struggles, on occasion, that happens. So the fingernails are cut and submitted as separate, right hand, left hand fingernails. And after that, the body is placed in a position where one can do a gynecological examination. Of course, this is a child, so that is not the test that we would do on an adult, for example. So photographs are taken, the legs are spread, the anal examination is done first, and the reason for that is if the vaginal examination is done first because of the situation of how close the anus and the vagina are, maybe the evidence from the vagina, if it's done first, would trickle down into the anus, and that's the reason the anus is done first. So the anus is examined, swabs are collected. This child has big hair because she is really a small girl, so that part of it is not done. Swabs are taken from the anus, swabs are taken from the vagina, swabs are taken from the cervix. This girl is a baby, so you cannot see her cervix. So many swabs are taken of the vaginal area. And fluid, we squirt fluid into the vaginal canal, and that is also submitted as evidence. If there is anything extraneous, meaning fibers, hair, that is also collected as it was in this child. And of course, photographs are extensive, documenting the process of the injury. And then that is submitted along with blood, DNA card, which we have. We take DNA cards on our homicides, and that is submitted as evidence in the same kit.
Once you take the swabs, do you take care to mark them and refrigerate them?
Yes.
May I approach? Let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification as states quadruple E. Ask you if you recognize this exhibit.
Yes, so these are the swabs that are submitted from the office. We have all the kits that are sent to us, and I recognize that. The labels are prepared at the office. My signature and description of what they are is written in my handwriting. So these are the rectal swabs.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked for states identification as states quadruple C. And what do you recognize these to be?
Okay, so these are, again, same type of containers. My writing as to indicate what they are, and her label characterizing that it's Cherish Perrywinkle.
And these are the vaginal
Vaginal
swabs?
swabs, correct.
Dr. Rao, did you actually, to the naked eye, observe fluid in her vaginal vault before you conducted the swabbing?
Yes.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked as states quadruple D as in dog. Do you recognize those swabs?
Yes.
And what are they?
So I took swabs from the top of her pubic area. Instead of, there is no hair, you can't comb it. So I swabbed the area just looking for evidence.
Now, at the medical examiner's office, you all do not conduct laboratory testing on these
No.
swabs. Let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification as states quadruple F, as in Frank. Are those the oral swabs that you took from inside Cherish Perrywinkle's mouth?
Yes.
You'll note, Dr. Rao, that Cherish is actually spelled incorrectly on these exhibits. Will you explain to the jury why that is?
Yes, so the first day we got information from the stepfather, and he spelled her name like that. The following day, the mother gave the correct spelling, as a result of which we have a discrepancy in her first name.
This time, Your Honor, I would tender states quadruple E into evidence, states quadruple F, states quadruple D, and states quadruple C is the next number of exhibits.
All right. Quadruple C will be entered as State's Exhibit 80, quadruple D 81, quadruple E 82, and quadruple F 83 in evidence.
So now I'm going to take you through injuries sustained by Cherish Perrywinkle to her genitalia. Will you tell the jury before we go through the photographs what you observed?
Okay, so looking at her genital area and her anal area, she had so much trauma. It was all, the anatomy was totally distorted by the injury that she sustained both to her vaginal area and her anus.
Did you actually bring a book with you today that you rely on for anatomical diagrams?
Yes.
And in fact, would an anatomical diagram of a prepubescent female assist you in describing to the jury where genitalia should be on a young girl?
Yes.
Let me show you. States triple Y. First of all, for the record, will you tell the jury where this anatomical diagram comes from?
Yes, so this is the book, third edition, Pediatric and Adolescent Gynecology, where, it helps doctors to see the anatomy, because even sometimes doctors don't know the anatomy, so that's the reason these diagrams are put out.
And using this diagram, will you please point out, obviously it's reflected, but the vagina and the anus?
Yes, so you can see that the vagina is right here. This area is important when we come to describe injuries, because that is where one passes urine. So there is a distance between the area where one passes urine and the vagina, and there is quite a distance between the vagina and where the anus is. That is a large area of tissue, soft tissue.
Okay, I'm next going to show you State 77, which is a photograph of the genitalia of Cherish Perrywinkle. Will you please orient the jury to this photograph and describe the injuries reflected in this photograph?
Yes, so this is without spreading her legs. Normally you can't see this. You won't be able to see this if you look at a little girl, because the fat of the labia cover everything. So, but here, because of the way it is injured, you can actually see into her vagina. So this is where, this is the urethra, where one passes urine, and you can see how red and swollen that area is. And then you have the vagina, and this is the anus right here. And what is left between the two is a very thin area of tissue. If you bring your minds back to the first diagram, where there was
take you back there.
where there was this broad area right here, it is now reduced to a very thin area of tissue. So anus and vagina.
Okay, we have a couple more pictures of this. 78, will you please orient the jury to the direction of this photograph and explain the injury reflected here?
Okay, so here again, it's not opened or spread to demonstrate. It's just, that's how it was because of the tremendous injury that this child sustained. So this is her anus, and then you have that thin tissue between, and this is her vagina.
State 79.
Okay, so close up, this is where you pass urine. You can see how red it is, how swollen it is. This is a vagina, which normally you can't see, and you can see all the tearing there, and you can see the anus. Very thin tissue, it's just, you could feel it, how thin it was.
mentioned earlier that during an autopsy, you take dissections.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you noticed an area in Cherish's back of her head where you...
Yes.
So you shaved her head
Yes.
and then cut her scalp so you could look at the injury more closely?
Yes.
And did you photograph that?
Yes.
And what, I'm going to direct your attention now to States 84 and ask you to explain to the jury what is reflected here.
Okay, so when the scalp is reflected back, you have an area of hemorrhage right there.
I'm sorry, where?
On the left side of her scalp, right
Right.
there.
And how is that caused, Dr. Rao?
Blunt trauma.
I'm going to show you 2 more photographs of the dissection taken of Cherish Perrywinkle's throat. Will you first tell the jury what you saw when you dissected her throat?
Yes, so what we do is, I'm sorry, I have to take a break. Can I just have like 5 minutes?
Do you want a 5-minute break? I think we'll all take a break for 10 minutes. Thank you.
You conducted that dissection.
Okay, so it's the neck dissection that we refer to. Anterior, which means front, neck dissection, where you have layer by layer of muscle that is dissected looking for injury as a result of the strangulation.
And what injury did you see?
So she had hemorrhage into the skeletal muscle, the muscles that lie right across right here. And if you turn your neck, you have muscles right here. So she had bleeding into some of those muscles.
Do you also collect clothing from the body when the body comes to the medical examiner's office?
Yes, yes.
May the witness step down, Your Honor?
She may.
Now, in this case, did you also go to the police memorial building to photograph Mr. Smith?
Yes,
Do you see Mr. Smith in court today?
yes.
Will you please point him out and identify an article of clothing he's wearing?
Right there, he's wearing a tan-colored shirt and a checked tie.
Is he seated at a table between 2 lawyers?
Yes,
May the record reflect that the witness, Dr. Rao, has identified the defendant, Donald Smith?
The record will so reflect.
And will you explain to the jury for what purpose you went to the police memorial building?
yes, so after he...
Let me interrupt you real quickly. I should have asked you, on what date did you go to the police memorial building?
On the 22nd of June, 2013.
Approximately what time did you arrive there?
I can't recall.
Okay. And did you, I may have already
I think
asked
it was
you
in the
this.
afternoon.
Okay. Did you also direct photography be taken of Mr. Smith?
Yes,
Okay. Dr. Rao, let me direct you to your monitor again. States 89. Does this photograph reflect what Mr. Smith was wearing and what he looked like when you went to the police memorial building on June 22nd, 2013?
yes,
Let me direct your attention to States 93. Is this a true and accurate photograph of the jeans and the shoes he was wearing?
yes,
Dr. Rao, did you direct that the defendant be disrobed?
Yes,
And for what purpose?
for purposes of photography and evidence collection.
And specifically, did you want to look at his penis?
Yes,
For what reason?
to make sure that any injuries or any abnormalities be documented and interpreted, because that's what forensic pathologists do. We look at injuries and we interpret injuries.
Let me direct your attention to State's Exhibit 90. Will you please explain to the jury what this photograph is of?
Yes, this is the penis of Mr. Smith, and he does have abnormalities that are trauma-related, meaning injuries.
And will you describe those injuries to the jury?
Yes, so right here you can see that there is a circular bruise of the head of his penis, and he has many areas of bruising on the shaft of his penis.
Dr. Rao, do you have an opinion as to the injury reflected on the head of his penis as to how it could be caused?
Yes,
What is that?
sucking motion with significant force.
Let me show you States 91. Will you orient, are these your gloved hands reflected in this photograph?
Yes.
And will you orient the jury to this photograph, please?
Okay, so this is the top of his penis, and I have extended it so that you can see the bruising better, and you can see the area of bruising on the top, on the outer surface of his penis.
And what if any opinion do you have about the aging of this bruising?
They are fresh injuries consistent with the time frame of the death of this child.
And last photo, States 92. Will you orient the jury to this photograph and explain what injury is reflected in it?
Okay, so this is again the shaft of his, the long portion, and you have injuries on the side which are bruising.
Did you also take swabs of his penis and from his mouth?
Yes,
In the same manner that you earlier testified to as taking swabs from the body of Cherish?
yes.
In that approach? Last question for you. I know you've explained your opinion as to cause of manner of death being strangulation. You know that Cherish's body was discovered in the water.
Yes,
Was there any evidence of drowning?
no.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Rao, when you were present with Mr. Smith, did you have somebody there taking pictures for you?
Yes,
And that was to document any injuries he had to him, right?
yes,
And every injury would have been documented, right?
correct.
Okay. Did he have any scratches, like on his arms,
No,
on his legs?
no.
Okay. And let me ask you a couple questions, for lack of a better way of saying it, sort of about the mechanics of strangulation. Once a person tightens around another person's neck, you said that death would occur between 3 to 5 minutes later?
If it is not relieved, the pressure that's not relieved, yes.
Okay. And how long before somebody blacks out if you're putting pressure in that same place?
Probably a couple minutes.
Well, a couple minutes could be 3 minutes, right?
Could be, what, sorry?
2 to 3 minutes, is that what you're saying?
It could be
Because you said that the time that it would take them to die would be 3 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes, yes.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the sport of MMA fighting
No,
or wrestling, any of those things?
yes,
Okay. 2 trained athletes in a cage, so to speak, and one gets behind the other and starts to choke him, and he goes down because he passes out in about 15 seconds. Have you ever seen that?
okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit as to what the defense attorney has brought up.
Well, I just wonder, have you ever seen that?
I have read about it.
Okay.
I have not personally witnessed such an event.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
No, ma'am.
May this witness be excused?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. We appreciate your time.